There are moments in life when we are met not with kindness but with friction, as if the universe sends us souls wrapped in chaos, not to harm us, but to reveal us to ourselves. Toxic people, you see, are not detours in our journey. They are mirrors, carved from shadow, placed precisely in our path to awaken the light we forgot we carried. Every tension, every silence, every piercing glance, it's all part of a grand choreography where even discord has its role in the harmony. The challenge isn't in resisting the noise, but in listening for the rhythm beneath it. The quiet invitation to rise with grace, to respond with wisdom, to become more of who we truly are. So today, we won't simply defend ourselves from toxicity. We'll learn to transcend it. Did. Because even the most dissonant note, when held long enough, becomes a part of the symphony. You ever notice how the people who hurt us the most often end up teaching us the most about ourselves? It's strange, isn't it? We enter conversations hoping for connection. We walk into rooms looking for understanding, and then, out of nowhere, someone cuts deep. They manipulate, they gaslight, they twist the truth just enough to make us question our own. And we leave those encounters feeling small, confused, and maybe even ashamed. But what if I told you that those very moments, those exact people, were never meant to destroy us? What if they were placed in our path to awaken something we couldn't see on our own? Too nay. Toxic people often wear very convincing masks. They present as charming, confident, even generous. But underneath, there's often a storm. Unresolved pain, insecurity, and the quiet desperation to control something in a world that feels chaotic. And here's the thing. That has nothing to do with you. Their behavior isn't a reflection of your worth. It's a projection of their own fear. But our mistake is that we take it personally. We make their storm about us. We think, what did I do wrong? Maybe if I explain myself better. Maybe if I try harder. Maybe I just need to be more patient. No, you don't need to fix yourself to survive someone else's dysfunction. And yet, here's the paradox. While toxic people are not our fault, they are still our mirror. Not a mirror of our value, but a mirror of our boundaries, a reflection of where we still seek validation, where we've given away our voice, where we haven't fully anchored into our own clarity. You see, life has this poetic way of holding up mirrors, not to shame us, but to show us. And sometimes the mirror looks like someone who triggers us so deeply that we have no choice but to pause and ask, why does this get to me? Is this revealing that I've ignored in myself? That question, asked honestly, is the beginning of wisdom. Because the first step in outsmarting a toxic person is not about them. It's about becoming aware of you in their presence. Do you shrink when they enter the room? Do you find yourself walking on eggshells, rehearsing every word before you speak? That awareness is gold. It tells you where your power is leaking and where it's waiting to be reclaimed. But it takes courage, not the kind of courage that confronts or argues or demands to be heard. That's easy. The real courage is quiet. It's the courage to observe. To see their behavior clearly without needing to fix it. To name the manipulation, but not react to it. To stop performing for approval that you never needed in the first place. Because once you stop needing a toxic person to see you, to understand you, to validate you, they lose their hold. It's just like waking up from a dream. You suddenly see them not as this overwhelming presence, but as a wounded human trying to fill a void that you didn't create, and you cannot heal. And in that clarity, something profound happens. You stop engaging in the script they've written. For you. For you. You don't take the bait. You don't defend, explain, or shrink. You simply see, and that seeing is the beginning of freedom. Now, I'm not suggesting you stay in situations that are abusive or harmful. But I am saying this. When someone toxic enters your story, your first responsibility is not to fight them. It's to find yourself. Because when you do, their power fades. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Outsmarting a toxic person isn't about being clever or outwitting them with words. It's about stepping so fully into your own self-awareness that their games can no longer reach you. You become unshakable, not because you're louder, but because you're rooted. And people who are rooted don't flinch in the face of chaos. They simply watch, they learn, and then they choose to rise. That's the invitation here. Not to win the argument, but to win yourself back. Because once you've truly seen the mirror, you'll never chase the mask again. Have you ever felt guilty for setting a boundary? It's a quiet kind of guilt. Subtle. It whispers things like, a maybe I'm being too harsh, or a what if they think I don't care. And sometimes the guilt isn't even loud. It's just a tightness in your chest, a hesitation in your voice when you say, no, I can't do that. But here's something worth thinking about. We were never taught that boundaries are an act of love. We were taught that they're selfish, that they create distance, that they hurt feelings, especially when we're dealing with toxic people, the ones who manipulate that very conditioning to make us believe that their discomfort is our responsibility. But it's not. Boundaries are sacred. Boundaries are sacred. And not because they push people away, but because they honor the space where your peace, your values, and your integrity live. And if someone gets offended by the fact that you're protecting your own emotional well-being, that says more about them than it ever will about you. Will. Toxic people don't dislike boundaries because they're unfair. They dislike them because boundaries make manipulation harder. They can't gaslight someone who's anchored. They can't guilt-trip someone who knows the difference between kindness and self-sacrifice. They can't twist the truth when you know what you stand for. So setting a boundary with a toxic person isn't a declaration of war. It's an affirmation of who you are. And here's the thing. You don't need to justify it. You don't need a PowerPoint presentation to explain why you won't tolerate being spoken to a certain way. You don't need a monologue about why you're stepping back. You can simply say, no, that doesn't work for me, and let it stand. Let the silence do the rest. Because the most powerful boundaries are the ones that don't beg to be understood. Now, of course, the pushback will come. It always does, especially when the person on the other end is used to crossing lines without consequence. They'll test it. They'll call you cold. They'll say, you've changed. And you have. Because growth always looks like distance to the ones who preferred you small, agreeable, and easily controlled. But that's not your concern anymore. Your concern is you. Your concern is being able to sleep at night knowing you didn't abandon yourself to make someone else comfortable. And yes, setting boundaries is uncomfortable at first. Not just for them, but for you. Especially if you've spent years people pleasing. Especially if your identity was built around keeping the peace. But eventually you realize that peace kept at the cost of your inner truth isn't peace at all. It's performance. And we're not here to perform. We're here to live, fully, honestly, and unapologetically. When you begin to set boundaries from that place, from deep alignment rather than defensiveness, something shifts. You stop needing people to get it. You stop editing yourself for approval. You stop negotiating your values just to avoid conflict. You begin to walk through the world with a kind of quiet dignity. And people feel it, even the toxic ones. Some will leave, some will resist, and some will adjust because they realize they now have to meet you at the level of respect you've decided you deserve. That's not control, that's leadership. See, boundaries aren't ultimatums, they're invitations. They say, this is how I move. If you'd like to walk beside me, here's the rhythm. And if someone chooses not to, that's okay. Not everyone is meant to walk the whole path with you. The irony is, the stronger your boundaries, the more space you actually create for real connection. Because people no longer have to guess what you stand for. They can trust it. And trust, real trust, only grows in the soil of clarity. So no, boundaries are not selfish. They are a profound act of self-respect. They are a reminder to the world, and to yourself, that your presence is not an obligation. It's a gift, and that gift deserves to be honored. Because the truth is simple. When you stop apologizing for protecting your peace, you start showing others how to protect their own. Have you ever walked away from a conversation with a toxic person and thought, why did I say that? Why did I let them get to me again? That moment. That inner frustration. It's familiar to so many of us. It's like being pulled into a current you didn't even see until it was too late. 1 minute you're calm and centered, and the next, you're explaining yourself, defending your choices, maybe even raising your voice. And afterward, you're left feeling drained, maybe even a little ashamed. But here's the thing we don't talk about enough. Toxic people don't need to win arguments. They win when they pull you out of yourself. Words are tools, tools that can build, break, confuse, clarify, heal, or hurt. But with toxic people, words are often used like smoke, meant to obscure, distract, twist, and trap. You've probably been in one of those conversations, the kind where no matter how clearly you speak, they find a way to spin it. They interrupt. They talk in circles. They turn your questions into accusations. And before long, you're not even sure what you were trying to say in the first place. That's not accidental. It's by design. Toxic people often manipulate language to control the narrative. They distort facts, inflate emotions, and leave you questioning your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. It's not just what they say it's how they say it, and what they imply and what they don't say. Silence can be weaponized. Praise can be bait. Sarcasm can be disguised as humor. The manipulation is subtle, but surgical. So if you want to outsmart a toxic person, you have to reclaim the narrative. Not through shouting or arguing or trying to win every word, but through clarity, precision, intention, through becoming a master of your language. This isn't about learning how to talk like a lawyer or trap them in their own logic. It's about rising above their chaos by being incredibly clear about who you are, what you mean, and what you're willing to engage in. You don't have to match their complexity. In fact, simplicity is your greatest weapon. When you speak from a grounded place, when your language is direct, calm, and rooted in truth, you create a kind of gravity that toxic manipulation can't float in. Take a moment to think about the words you use when you feel cornered. Do you over-explain? Do you soften your truth just to avoid conflict? Do you backtrack because you're afraid of how your clarity might be received? That's where toxic people thrive, in those gray areas. But when you choose purposeful language that's not reactive, not overly emotional, but simply true, you eliminate the fog they use to confuse you. You don't need to over-articulate your values. You only need to own them. Shoo. This means learning to say things like, I hear what you're saying and I disagree. This is what's true for me. That's not something I'm going to discuss right now. I'm not available for this kind of conversation. These statements aren't aggressive, they're just clean. And clean communication is kryptonite to toxic behavior. You see, toxic people want you to unravel. They want you to lose your footing so they can gain ground. But when you speak with purpose, when you use language like a compass instead of a weapon, you take that power back. You stop trying to win and start standing firm in what you know. And here's the beautiful irony. The moment you stop trying to convince them, you start to convince yourself. You begin to hear your own strength in your voice. You begin to recognize that the point of communication isn't to be liked, it's to be aligned. That alignment changes everything. When you're aligned, you don't need their approval. You don't panic in the silence. You don't chase after misunderstood meanings. You speak what's true for you and you let it stand. No hooks, no defense, just truth. And maybe they'll twist it. Maybe they'll roll their eyes or laugh or call you dramatic. That's okay. Let them try. Their response is no longer your responsibility. Your responsibility is to protect the integrity of your voice. Because once you reclaim your voice, you reclaim your reality. You no longer exist in their story. You begin writing your own. You're no longer trying to fit your words into their expectations. You're choosing words that reflect who you actually are, not who they want you to be. And you don't need to do this loudly. In fact, some of the most powerful shifts come from speaking softly, but clearly. Toxic people can't handle clarity. They can't handle consistency. They thrive on distortion and chaos. You remove their oxygen when you stop matching their emotional volatility and start grounding yourself in steady, intentional truth. So here's the invitation. Speak less to be understood, and more to be known. Speak not to win, but to remain centered. Let your words reflect your values, not their dysfunction. And remember, the point isn't to convince a toxic person to see you clearly. It's to speak clearly enough that you never lose sight of yourself. Because the most genius way to outsmart someone who manipulates with words is to never let them rewrite your truth. They win when you abandon your calm. When you give away your energy, when you react, that's the game, and they're very good at playing it. They know how to push just the right buttons. They know where your insecurities live, where your boundaries have cracks, and they know how to bait you with silence, with sarcasm, with subtle digs that feel like paper cuts, small but sharp. And we fall for it because we want to be understood. We want to be seen as fair, kind, reasonable. But with toxic people, you have to realize you're not playing on a level field. You're walking into a room where logic doesn't matter, truth is fluid, and the louder you get, the more they feed on your emotional unraveling. So what do? You stop playing. You stop reacting. You stop reacting. Now, let me be clear. Non-reaction isn't about silence that simmers with suppressed anger. It's not passive-aggressive or cold. It's presence. Pure, calm, grounded presence. It's choosing to stay rooted when someone tries to shake you. It's saying with your energy, I see what you're doing, but I won't participate. There's immense power in that. Because when you don't react, you change the entire dynamic of the exchange. You hold your center. You become unpredictable, and not in a chaotic way, but in a grounded, composed way that disrupts the toxic cycle. You see, toxic people rely on patterns. They rely on your predictability. If they can poke you and know you'll flare up, they'll keep doing it. Know you'll flare up, they'll keep doing it. But when your response is no response, just calm, neutral clarity, they lose the script. The game breaks. They don't know where to go from there. And something else happens too. You start to feel stronger. Not because you've proven a point, but because you've protected your energy. You haven't allowed someone else to dictate your emotional state. That's real power. That's emotional leadership. It doesn't mean you don't feel anything. You do. You might feel disappointed, hurt, even furious, but you learn to pause. So as tourists, you learn to observe those emotions, let them rise, let them speak, and then let them pass through you without using them as fuel for reaction. That kind of mastery isn't loud. It doesn't demand to be seen. It simply is. And people notice. They feel it. Even those who hoped they could shake you, especially them. And here's the deeper truth. When you stop reacting, you start responding from intention, not impulse. You reclaim choice. You decide what energy enters your space, what words leave your mouth, and what stories you continue to carry. Because reaction is often rooted in old wounds, places inside us still seeking resolution. But presence is rooted in now, in who you are today, in who you are becoming. The moment you choose not to react, you step into that becoming. You step into leadership, not over others, but over yourself. And that kind of leadership isn't just for dealing with toxic people. It changes how you show up in every relationship, in every room, in every moment. We often think power is about how loud we speak. But true power, real, grounded power, is in how deeply we listen. Not just to others, but to ourselves. And when you listen closely, you'll realize not everything deserves your reaction. Not every fire needs you to throw wood on it. So the next time you feel yourself being pulled, that rising heat in your chest, that urge to defend, to prove, to push back, pause, breathe, choose stillness. Because in that moment, you're not being passive. You're practicing power. And the most powerful move you'll ever make with a toxic person is not saying more. It's needing less. Have you ever paused just for a moment in the middle of conflict, not to react, but to observe? It's not easy, especially when someone toxic is standing in front of you, pressing every emotional button they can find. The instinct is to protect yourself, to respond. But sometimes the most brilliant thing you can do in the face of toxicity is rise above it. Not in arrogance, not in superiority, but in awareness, in vision. When we're entangled with toxic people, it's easy to get caught in the weeds. We zero in on the moment, the insult, the manipulation, the blame. And in that hyper-focus, we forget that this moment is part of something much bigger, a much longer story. One that is not just about the pain in front of us, but about the person we are becoming because of it. What if the situation you're in, however unfair, however frustrating, is actually a divine invitation? A chance not just to endure, but to evolve. Sometimes the very people who seem to bring out the worst in us are the ones who reveal the work we still need to do. The insecurity we haven't healed. The insecurity we haven't healed. The boundaries we haven't fully embraced. The strength we didn't know we had. And if you can shift your perspective, if you can see the toxicity not as a personal attack, but as a powerful opportunity, you begin to move differently. You stop playing defense. You start learning. You start leading. Because toxic people can't reach you when your perspective is elevated. They want you on the ground, reacting, flailing, doubting. But the moment you zoom out and ask yourself, what is this here to teach me? You change the game. You move from survival to strategy, from hurt to higher ground, to higher ground. This isn't about spiritual bypassing. It's not about pretending that toxic behavior doesn't affect you. Of course it does. It hurts. It wounds. But when you choose to see pain as part of your transformation, you strip it of its power to define you. Uh, you're not denying it. You're just refusing to be reduced by it. And this is where genius begins to take shape, not in clever comebacks or emotional armor, but in vision. In the quiet, unwavering decision to use what was meant to break you as fuel to build something wiser, kinder, more grounded within you. You don't outsmart toxicity by becoming cold or calculating. You outsmart it by refusing to shrink, by choosing expansion instead of contraction, by deciding that every difficult interaction is a thread in a larger tapestry, and that your role in this story isn't to win battles, but to grow into someone you respect. Think about it. When someone throws you chaos and you offer clarity, when someone sends you aggression and you return calm, when someone tries to pull you down and you lift your head even higher, that's power. Not because you crushed them, but because you didn't let them alter who you are. Then that kind of power, it changes you. It softens your edges while strengthening your center. And the more you practice it, the less toxic people have to work with. Because here's what no one tells you: you don't have to respond to every provocation. You don't have to explain your side to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to make things fair. Sometimes the most liberating thing you can do is let someone think they've won while you quietly walk away with your dignity intact. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. And over time, you start to realize that toxic people were never obstacles to your growth. They were accelerators. Their presence forced you to go deeper, to get clearer, to develop tools you never would have discovered in peace. You never would have discovered in peace. And no, it doesn't make what they did right. It doesn't excuse harm. But it does mean you reclaimed agency. You chose transformation over retaliation. And in doing so, you stepped into something far greater than survival. You stepped into your purpose. Because this journey you're on, it's not random. It's not random, Mother Kitcher. It's not chaotic. It's unfolding with perfect timing, even when it doesn't feel like it. Every challenge, every toxic encounter, every difficult conversation, it's shaping you into someone more honest, more awake, more aligned. You're not here to fight small battles. You're here to rise into big purpose. So the next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, don't resist. Don't react. Just rise. Because when you elevate your vision, you make yourself unreachable to anything that tries to keep you small. There's a moment, sometimes quiet, sometimes sudden, when you realize the people who challenged you the most weren't obstacles. They were invitations. Invitations to grow, to see more clearly, to step into something bigger than the story you were telling yourself. True. We talk a lot about toxic people, how to recognize them, how to guard against them, how to stand firm in our values when everything around us feels shaky. But if you zoom out just a little, you begin to see that these moments, these interactions, these trials, they're not random. They're not meaningless. In fact, they may be some of the most carefully placed lessons life will ever offer you. Not to test your strength, but to reveal it. Because your life isn't just a string of circumstances, it's a carefully unfolding process, a story, a rhythm. And even when it feels like things are breaking down, like people are turning against you, like the world is pressing in, you're still in motion, still becoming, still part of something vast and beautiful and necessary. But you forget that. We all do. We start to believe we're just surviving the moment, that we're just dealing with this one person or this one season. We forget that everything is connected, that nothing is wasted, not even pain, especially not pain. You see, there's kind of elegance to the way life works. Every challenge you face, every betrayal, every frustration, every confusing, unfair moment is part of a greater pattern that's shaping you into someone capable of carrying the purpose you've been given. So when you're dealing with someone toxic, when they try to pull you into their chaos, when they push all your buttons, when they do everything they can to get a reaction, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's uncomfortable. But underneath that tension is a quiet opportunity to remember who you are. You are not just a person defending yourself. You are a soul expanding. You are a human being learning how to lead from within. And when you remember that, your posture changes. You stop being so rattled. You stop taking it so personally. You start to see the deeper layers, the patterns, the meaning, the invitation. You realize this moment isn't just about discomfort. It's about alignment. It's about being asked, who do you want to be in the face of this? Do you want to mirror their dysfunction? Or do you want to model something different? And when you choose that higher path, not from pride, but from presence, you step into your role in this larger design. You become a stabilizing force in a world that desperately needs more grounded people. More people who aren't ruled by ego. More people who don't react out of fear. More people who live from a deep place of conviction, not a shallow need to prove something. That's the gift of these encounters. They refine you. They strip away the noise, the masks, the false urgency to be everything for everyone. And they remind you that your job isn't to fix other people. It's to stay true to yourself. That's not always easy. In fact, it's often the harder road. But it's also the freer one. Because when you start seeing yourself as part of something greater, you begin to realize that not every battle needs to be fought. Not every misunderstanding needs to be corrected. Not every toxic person needs to be taught a lesson. Sometimes, the lesson is for you. Sometimes the victory isn't in a winning the situation. It's in walking away with your peace intact. And when you do that enough times, when you choose clarity over chaos, presence over performance, stillness over struggle, you begin to embody something rare. You become someone who moves through life with depth, with steadiness, with purpose. They feel the way you hold your ground, the way you speak truth without needing to shout, the way you protect your values without apologizing for them. You become a mirror, not of dysfunction, but of dignity. And slowly, that changes things. Not just for you, but for the people watching. The people who are still learning. The people who are still trying to figure out what it looks like to live with integrity in a world full of noise. So no, this isn't just about dealing with difficult people. It's about becoming someone who no longer depends on external validation to know their worth. It's about anchoring into something timeless, something bigger, something real. Because your life, your actual life, isn't happening to you. It's happening through you. And your role in it is not small. It never has been. So the next time someone tries to pull you off course, remember this. You're not here to react. You're here to rise. Because your life is not a battlefield. It's a masterpiece in progress.